let's get to some of the games because some of the games were incredible. I want to talk about the game I was at. Texas hammers Michigan 31-12. Now, I think Texas, and I reflected this in my rankings when I put them out on my Twitter. You can follow me at Joel Klatt on Twitter. I always put out kind of my top 10 really late. I fly back home. I'm watching the games in the plane the entire time. I get back home. I watch the late games. And then right before I go to bed, which is right around midnight, maybe a little bit later, I'm on the West Coast. 12:30, maybe 1 o'clock. I'll always tweet out a top 10. And so, like, if you're not following me, go ahead and go over and follow me at Joel Klatt. And in my top 10, I did something that sometimes I'll do, but this is just the way I was feeling. Because of what I saw with Texas and because of what I believe about Georgia and Ohio State, I really think that we have a 3-team top tier in college football. So I put them all as 1A, 1B, and 1C in my top 10. All right. These 3 teams are the elite teams in college football. Could others join them? Possibly. Could they have bad days? Possibly. But right now, based on their rosters and some of the action that I've seen, certainly on film and then certainly live last week in the Big House, these are the 3 teams that are, I think head and shoulders above everybody else. Now, whether that remains to be the same next week, I'm not sure. They're 18 to 22-year-old kids, but it felt like that game, 31-12, was even more lopsided than that score indicated. 31-12 to me, I'm sitting in the booth. That felt a lot more like a 42-6 game. To me, it wasn't really close. At one point, I looked up. I can't remember exactly the point that I looked at the stat monitor in the booth. It had to be sometime in the second quarter. And I looked down, and it was like 42 snaps of total offense, just total plays for Texas. And it was like 15 for Michigan. And I was like, yeah, the game's over. It's over. The game was over in the second quarter. Now, Michigan fans might be upset about that, but it's true. And then that's right when that sequence of events happened, when they turned it over a couple of times, Texas scores a couple of times, and I'm like, okay, now it's really over. I just never got the sense that Michigan has an offense that yesterday or even maybe moving forward was going to be able to play from behind and go and win a football game. The offense, and we'll get to Michigan in a moment, was less than dynamic for the second straight week. So what did I learn about the game? Let's start with Texas. 3 things that I was impressed with from the Texas Longhorns. Number 1, Quinn Ewers is excellent. The guy can play, man. He is such a good player. He makes really quick decisions in the pocket. I was most impressed with his feet, with his footwork, his elusiveness in the pocket, because there was a couple of times in particular in that first quarter, and more specifically on third down, that he was able to get himself loose, and that's what was creating the bigger plays, the explosive plays for Texas down the field. He did a great job of that. Quinn Ewers is, right now, my favorite for the Heisman Trophy. Based on what I saw on Saturday, the way that he's playing and the offense that he has around him, I don't see any reason why he can't go to New York and maybe win that trophy. He was 24 of 36 for 246 yards and 3 touchdowns, and it could have been more. I felt like they got a bit conservative, not that they took their foot off the gas per se, but they got a little bit conservative because it was very clear that their defense was dominating Michigan. So there was no reason to put the ball at risk and go all gas, no brakes, if you will, to steal their term, and create momentum for Michigan through a turnover. There was no reason to do that. Their offensive line was playing great, and that's going to be my number 2 impression. So number 1 is Ewers was excellent. Number 2, that O-line is a problem for everyone that they're going to face. They are really tough. They're big, they're physical, and they're experienced. They did not bat an eye at some of the exotic looks that Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinator for Michigan, was throwing at them on third down. They did a great job in protection and maybe even better job in the run game. The game plan was so elite for Ewers and that offensive line. So I think the 2 best players that Michigan have are their defensive tackles, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. And what Texas did in the game plan, to me, was brilliant. I started to early in the second quarter, it just dawned on me. I was like, everything is quick and to the perimeter when those 2 players are on the field, Grant and Graham. And then as soon as they would leave the field because they were tired, because they were on the field for, at that point, like 40 plus snaps, they leave the field because they're tired. And Texas immediately got big and went right downhill at the backups for Michigan. It was a great plan because then it was like, oh boy, those guys better go back in there or Texas is just going to run the football right down Michigan's throat. So Sark did a masterful job, and I don't think he was avoiding those guys as much as his plan was to fatigue them. Okay, so some people will be like, well, no, they could have blocked them. They were doing just fine. Yeah, they were running the ball just fine. But it was to fatigue those guys. It was to get to the depth of Michigan. It's like in baseball, a really good hitter and good hitting teams will be selective with the starting pitcher because they want to get to the bullpen in the 6th inning and not the 7th inning. Okay. They want to see the middle relievers, not the setup guy and the closer. So how do you do that? You see pitches. You extend his pitch count. Well, that's what Sark was doing. He was fatiguing the defensive tackles in the interior in order for them to run off the field, and then he would hammer them inside. It was just a really great game plan. And then the third thing I was impressed with was that the secondary was really improved from a year ago. Now, I don't know if it's a great secondary because I don't think Michigan was really a threat in the passing game, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But they were certainly better. I love Andrew Makuba, the transfer from Clemson. He was athletic. He was all over the field. They were creating turnovers. I think Jahdae Barron is a terrific player on one side and Muhammad on the other as their corners. So they're improved in terms of a defense. Their rotation of defensive linemen, I felt like did a really solid job against the run. Now, are they T'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy? No, probably not. But those guys, they were both, top two round picks in last year's draft. So are you going to replace them? Probably not, but they're good enough up front based on that rotation that they have. So Texas is for real. These are the ingredients for a national championship. Texas is not a team that's, I think, going to just fade away. Now, is Michigan great? I'm not sure. Could we be reading too much into this game? Maybe, but I don't think so because I've seen it. I've seen the teams that can go and win a national championship. I've seen their culture. I've seen their roster. I've seen their experience. And I've, more importantly, seen how they treat each other and how they go about their work. And Texas has that feel. That's a special group. I hope that they can maintain that special nature about their culture and the way that they care for one another within that building, because to me, they've got something special. I'm highly impressed with Sark, what he's built, and what this team has. They've got the experience and talent to go and win it. Now let's talk a little bit about Michigan. Okay, so there's two ways to look at Michigan. And I think people are going to fall into one of two categories. And after I give you the categories, I'm going to tell you where I fall. The first category would be, hey, they're replacing 18 starters, and Texas might be the best team in the country. So bad day at the office. We'll be fine. Bad day at the office. Michigan always starts slow, but they never have to play an opponent to this level early in the season. So we never see this early in the season. You can make an argument that even last year's team, while they were starting a bit slow, remember the Harbaugh suspension at the beginning of the year, they played a couple of clunkers, but got through them because they were so talented. And you can make an argument that like, hey, if they would have had to play this Texas team, maybe they would have lost and not gone 15-0. Okay, like that's fine. So you've got a team that's trying to replace 18 starters. Michigan always has to develop, and they've got to get better week in and week out, and they can feel like we'll be better in November than we are right now. And that might be true. That might be true. But the problem is that 0% of the Michigan blueprint was followed. 0. Now, maybe they'll take solace in that. They did not control the line of scrimmage. They did not control the clock in terms of the time of possession. They did not control the snap count. They did not control the field position game. They did not control the turnover battle. They lost all of that. And because of that, they're going to lose. By the way, if they do that against some of their opponents coming up, they will lose again multiple times because their blueprint has to be followed. So for them, they can just think to themselves in this first category, we'll be okay. We had that bad sequence in the second quarter. We did nothing that we were supposed to do. We're replacing 18 starters. We're going to develop, and we're going to be fine in November. That's category number one. Category number two, deep concern. Deep concern with the following things: that they are not in any position to go out and dominate like they have in the last 3 years on the offensive line, that nobody on the outside is winning, and it doesn't look like they have a wide receiver that can emerge as a number one threat. Now, they have that in Colston Loveland, so I don't want everyone to say like, oh, you, Colston Loveland. But in the first 2 weeks, Colston Loveland has had 2 or 3 drops and dropped that ball that you're seeing. If you're watching on YouTube, please go subscribe to the Joel Klatt YouTube channel. Colston Loveland caught and then dropped that ball right over the middle on a 3rd down, which led to a Texas touchdown. It was a catch and then a fumble. That's a concern. Davis Warren looked rattled on 3rd down, and it was not a team that was even close to presenting what I would consider like a threat on 3rd down because they were constantly in 3rd and long. It wasn't a team that looked like they could throw the ball when they wanted to versus when they had to. They had to throw the football because they couldn't run it very well. It was a team that lacked depth defensively, and it was very clear that when Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant weren't in the game, that the defense's level of play took a drastic downward trajectory. That wasn't the case last year. So all of those things would lead you into this deep concern category because all of those things are true. The lack of experience from Davis Warren and all of the plays and passes that they were not on the same page on the outside, whether it was wide receivers or even Colston Loveland. Okay, so which one do I fall into? I fall into the second. I think there's some deep concern for Michigan. There's elements of truth of the first category. I do think that it's a development team and that they will be better over time during the course of the season. The problem is, all of the things that I talked about in the second category are facts, and they are facts that are going to have to be overcome, developed through if they're going to have a season that they feel like they can have. At the beginning of the year, I thought to myself, you know what, Michigan, even with all this newness, it's their culture, it's their ability to develop. I still love their defense. I think their floor is 9-3. That's kind of what I thought. And to be fair, it's like this Texas game was always going to be a difficult win for them because Texas comes in with all the experience. They are at the top of college football. Michigan is in a rebuilding year. So it would have been a massive upset if they were to beat Michigan. But the way that it happened, that's the deep concern. It's the deep concern. And so this floor of 9-3 to me, all of a sudden went to 7-5 because it doesn't even take a great opponent to beat that Michigan team that doesn't play by their blueprint. If they're going to play games that are not by their blueprint and they've got to win by other means, I don't know. Because then all of a sudden they're going to be in a lot of one-score games and it's a bounce of the football there, it's a penalty here or there, and now all of a sudden you're a 5-loss team. So now their floor for me has moved down from 9-3 to 7-5. That doesn't mean they can't still go win 10 games. Again, if they want to go develop and get better in November, then good for them. There's elements of truth in that first category, but I'm concerned about them. Now you're staring at a USC team that looks like they are for real. I think USC, and I put them in my top 10, and they deserve to be in the top 10. The AP voters are terrible. They just move them up and down. I'm sorry. If you have an AP vote and you're listening to this, I love you. I love your passion for the sport. Give me a break with what you gave us in the AP poll. That was terrible. Like Tennessee and USC are clearly 2 of the best top 10 teams in the country. And so that's where they should be. And you don't have them there. And I think that that's garbage. Miami as well. So you've got USC they're staring at. That's just in a couple of weeks. You still have Oregon. Maybe that game looks easier now, the way that Oregon has played. You still have Ohio State down the road. So those are 3 games. So now all of a sudden you're like, oh man, 8-4 is certainly in the question. And what happens if you don't play by the blueprint in any one of the other games? Illinois just beat Kansas. So that's why I say kind of a floor for me is more of 7-5. Michigan's got to get better. They have to get better. And they've got to go back to the drawing board, and they have to understand the way that they win games, because following 0% of the blueprint is not going to do it. It's not going to do it. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel, and you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.